Sofyan Amrabat, a player that I was asking Manchester United to sign last summer, but it hasn't really worked this season. Partly because he hasn't really had much of an opportunity in terms of the minutes he has had on the football pitch. But for one reason or another, it hasn't really worked for Sofyan Amrabat. Until the last two games, against Arsenal and against Newcastle, where for me, he has been one of our better players on the pitch for large parts, if you remove the odd error, which we will talk about later. But in general, I think he's had a really good two games, and that does bring us to the question: should Manchester United sign him on a permanent deal this summer? You see, most of the background work has already been done because of last summer. You know, the negotiations over the loan and the potential to buy him in the future. Most of the work is done. This could be quite an easy signing for United. The question is, should we do it? Now, to answer that question, we need to look at what Amrabat brings to the side on the pitch. And we're going to start off with a focus of in possession, where we know what Amrabat is all about. It's all about keeping it simple, playing pretty safe football, but keeping the ball for his side. Retention-based player, a lot of short passes in midfield in particular. Yes, he can play long as well, and he does like a switch. But normally I would say he is about receiving the ball, getting his body in to protect the ball from the opposition, taking a couple of touches, and then moving the ball on with a fairly simple pass. Now, this doesn't seem like anything that extravagant, right, or really that impressive, but it is important to have those players in your team. Those players who take an extra couple of touches to slow down. If everyone plays two-touch football, you end up with a really, really quick football match. At times, in the intensity of the Premier League, you do need to slow it down, take extra touches, and manage the tempo of the game, if you like. And that is something which Amrabat does. We saw it against Newcastle. Now, the Newcastle game at times did open up and was quite end-to-end at times, quite vertical. But even in that environment, an environment which was based on second balls and duelling and battles, Amrabat was the calm, the player who wanted to take extra touches. We can see it here as Onana plays through the lines into the feet of Bruno Fernandes, and then Bruno's going to pop the pass back off towards Amrabat in a deeper position. Now, Amrabat, as he receives this ball, he could quickly play forward. We can see there is the option, if I quickly get the tool, there is quickly the option for him to play the ball either to his right hand side here, he could play the ball here, he could move it quickly, but instead what he does is he takes touches towards his own goal. Bit of a weird decision, you might think, but he's got his body between between the ball and the opposition, he is protecting the ball, and he's just taking a couple of slow touches back towards his own goal. Now, again, at times, if he does this every time, it's going to frustrate. But it is just this retention, this idea of keeping the ball, playing it safe, which United need. And eventually, he does draw the Newcastle player out. He draws the Newcastle player away from their own goal, and then finds this forward pass. Now, the pass is, of course, incredibly simple. It's nothing impressive. But it does do a good job of keeping the ball for United, while still being able to move the ball forward. And I think that's something which Amrabat does well. He retains the ball and he understands the tempo. He understands that you can't always go forward. He does keep possession for his side. At the same time, he can also be progressive as well. Even in a relatively poor season, in the Premier League, he has still progressed the ball for Manchester United, which is a good thing. This is a player who hasn't been up to his best. He's admitted that himself. Even in these last two games, he said there's more to come. We know what Amrabat does on the ball. He's safe in the first phase. You know, he's safe once again. He's not a player who is going to drop the shoulder and spin a man and dribble past a player. Not his game. But he will get his body between the ball and the opposition once again. He will protect the ball. He will move the ball on to someone else. Now, granted, he does have these weird situations where 2 times a game he's going to play an absolutely horrendous pass to the opposition. That needs to be cut out. He needs to concentrate more perhaps in those situations. But in general, I would say he is a player which keeps the ball well. And this does tie in with what we were talking about the other day. We were profiling the Manchester United midfield, saying these are the players we've currently got, and these are their strengths. And we then discussed the need for a player to come into the club who could be a deep six, who is focusing on the in-possession side of the game. Not necessarily a destroyer or a ball-winning midfielder, someone who's going to come into the side and be safe and retain the ball. We do kind of already have it at the club in Sofyan Amrabat. He is safe on the ball. He is a possession player. He can play in the first phase, dropping deep and moving the ball on. He can play in the middle phase, switching it side to side, progressing through the lines, but also understanding at times you've got to go sideways. Amrabat does actually already tick all of those boxes for us, if he cuts out the errors. Something to consider. Importantly though, he also does the defensive work as well.
So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFifa.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFifa for 10% off when you order.
Now I would argue it's actually the defensive side of the game where Amrabat has struggled a little bit at times this season, but I guess in a way that is to be understood. He hasn't really had a consistent run in the team, particularly in the midfield, and also he is playing in a new league. Every player which moves from Serie A to the Premier League makes some sort of comment about it being much more difficult. You've got to think and move at the same time, rather than doing one then the other. You have to do both at the same time. Players do tend to struggle with a move to the Premier League. Couple that with the fact that he's playing in a system which really asks a lot of our midfielders in terms of ground coverage. Can you really blame Amrabat for struggling? I don't think you can. And I think when he warms up to it, when he gets used to the Premier League or plays in a better system, you do get a good defensive player. Not an elite ball winner, not an elite ground cover or anything like that, but someone who goes about his defensive work very, very nicely. He does cover a decent amount of ground across the pitch. Yes, he's not going to absolutely munch it up, but he does cover the ground. He does have the ability to screen across his front line, moving from left to right. And once in the duels, once in the battles, he is effective. He is good in the tackle, he is strong in the tackle, and he is robust. He works hard, he gets into those situations, and then he challenges in those duels. Now, to criticise him a little bit here, the one concern I do have around him defensively is he's almost heavy-footed at times. Let's say this player here has the ball and is kind of dribbling across the pitch this way. Amrabat does have this weird tendency to kind of sprint over really quick, get himself flat-footed, and then when the opposition turn, he kind of quickly gets beaten. So, yes, I have concerns over Amrabat's defensive side of the game. Of course I do. But again, if we go back to those boxes we were looking to tick earlier, and the other day as well, with the profile of midfielder which we would like, a ball-playing six who can do defensive work, Amrabat ticks those boxes. He can do it. He can do it. And again, we did see this against Newcastle the other day. A game where I felt that he played much better. Now, initially, this first clip is going to come from understanding more than anything. So Casemiro, who was playing centre-back in this game, has of course moved much higher and lost possession. Amrabat recognises over here that he needs to fill in. He needs to help out his teammate. And he does that really effectively on this occasion. The ball eventually ends up in the box, and Amrabat puts in this absolutely brilliant slide tackle. This is a ball-winning midfielder, right? Someone who can go and win the battles. And then, of course, we've got the other clip as well, which everyone's been talking about. Now, the most important thing, or the main thing which people are focusing on here, is the fact that Amrabat covers the ground so well. But actually, what I like to focus on is that he's the first one who has the defensive instinct. He's the first one to even switch on. Now, yeah, you could make the argument that the other players were never going to make it back anyway. But if you watch this situation play out, Amrabat reacts before anyone else does. So Wan-Bissaka loses the ball here. And if you just watch our players, look at Amrabat here. He is the first one kind of getting ready to track back. Dallo, you could argue, is the other one over here. But even he, if you watch it actually at full speed, hasn't quite switched on yet to what is happening. Amrabat is the first player who has that intensity and that willingness to get back towards our own goal. And of course, when it comes to doing that work, he actually does it very well. Let's make sure this is muted so you don't get any annoying background noise. He does this work really well. He does so well here. I mean, the situation is not favourable, right? But he does such a good job of getting himself between the two players. He has to apply pressure to Gordon, because he can't make it too easy for Gordon to run in and shoot on goal. But he also has to be close enough, should the ball be cut across, that he can get to Isak as well. And again, he does this phenomenally well on this occasion. He does so well here to delay Gordon, but then also get across to Isak and actually make the block on the shot and turn it around for a corner. It's brilliant, brilliant defensive work. Now, yes, this is just one or two clips. We need a greater sample size. We need to see this over the course of the season. But Amrabat hasn't had the opportunity to do that because he hasn't been picked. I guess that brings us to the question, why hasn't he been picked? To be honest, I don't really know the answer to that question. Why hasn't Ten Hag been picking him this season? I'm not too sure. Because in my opinion, Amrabat, like I said all last summer, can be what United need. If you want a player who can get the ball down in midfield, who can take his time, who can manage the tempo and wants a lot of touches, sometimes dropping between the centre-backs, sometimes playing as a solo pivot, sometimes playing as a double pivot. He can do all of that. He will keep the ball for the side. Again, yes, he has to cut out those errors. But he will keep the ball for the side. He can be expansive at times, he can play the long range passes, and he can pass through the lines. He also has the ability at times to carry the ball as well out from the back. Not dribbling, but carrying, he can do it. Defensively, he covers ground reasonably well. Yes, he needs to work on not being so flat-footed in duels, but perhaps that will come with time and again adjusting to the Premier League. In general, I think he covers ground pretty well. He does work hard, and once he is in those battles, he tends to do well. Although it would be nice if he was a little bit taller. We're not going to get that. Sofyan Amrabat ticks a lot of the boxes. So the question for me isn't around Amrabat, it is around Manchester United. And what we want to do as a football club. What Ineos want to do, and whatever our manager wants to do. Should that be Ten Hag or someone else? What do they want to do with the approach moving forward? If you want a midfielder who can come into the side and retain the ball, be a passer, be decent in the first phase, not the main man, but kind of supplementing someone like Kobbie Mainoo, Amrabat can do that job. If you want a midfielder who is then going to keep the ball, manage the tempo, drop deep between centre-backs, play in midfield, again, keep the ball, Amrabat can do that with that kind of sprinkling of progression at times. And then defensively, again, you don't want him as your main man, I don't think, but he can do a job from a defensive point of view. He can cover ground if you couple him with a more athletic midfielder. He can cover ground in midfield. He can do a good job of winning the ball back. So the question for me isn't around Amrabat. I still think if you want to take the club in a certain direction, Amrabat is the right man, like I said last summer. I think it would be silly to doubt him. I think the quality is so clearly there. So the question is actually, what do Manchester United want to do? Do they want a retention-based midfielder? If we do, Amrabat represents really good business. £20 million, if not a little less, I can't actually remember. Is right there. It's a very easy deal for us to do, and you don't get that quality that cheap in many other places in the market, although there might be one or two which we'll look at another day. But Amrabat does tick the boxes of that retention midfielder. The question is, do United want to do it? If United want to stick to the approach from this season, you know, that end-to-end approach, that high front line, deep back line, lots of ground in the middle of the pitch, when we get the ball we're going to get it back, we're going to get it forward as quickly as possible, then no, you probably don't want Sofyan Amrabat. That's the decision which United need to make. What tactic do we want to use? What is the approach moving forward? Now, one thing I should clarify as well is that I think regardless, Sofyan Amrabat, if signed, is a backup player. I don't think he is a starting quality 6. Not at the moment. Maybe he might be in a couple of years if he adjusts to the league once again. At the moment, I don't think he is a starting quality 6. You know, if you go Amrabat, Kobbie Mainoo, Bruno Fernandes is our midfield next season, I don't think it's good enough. But as a backup player, again, remember that video from the other day where we were looking at profile of midfield, rebuilding the midfield. If you want that backup, build-up, ball-playing 6, Amrabat can still be the man. It's just about what direction Manchester United want to move in. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm going to leave it for today, because currently, as of right now, we don't know which direction we're going to go. So we don't know if Amrabat is the right man or not. So let me know in the comments. Do you want to keep him? Basically, the question is, should we move to retention or should we move to open football? That might make the decision for you. But regardless, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of Amrabat in general. Has he been good enough this season? Has he been given enough of an opportunity to be good enough? And just, is he the right player? Let me know what you think. But apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.